Okay, so to start with, I thought I'd give you a little bit of context. The Latrobe Wildlife Sanctuary is a 30-hectare outdoor ecology laboratory that has been transformed from farm paddocks into a thriving woodland. I guess it's a really good example, or a brilliant example, of what 45 years of conservation or applied conservation can actually achieve. The Latrobe Wildlife Sanctuary is situated at Latrobe University's Melbourne campus in Bundoora, north of Melbourne. A lot of people know about the Wildlife Sanctuary, and in fact we have many people visit our nursery, but we are foremost an education facility. We have developed a range of education and volunteer experiences that allow the local community or the broader community to tap into the research and knowledge that has been developed through our grassroots approach. So we have community groups, school groups, uni students, individuals, all being involved in our operations in a range of ways. It is through the school experiences and my work with local primary school students that I've developed my big fat idea today. Community engagement, not just bums on seats. I believe that if Latrobe University is serious about community engagement, then we need to think about the way we measure its success. We need to go beyond counting the number of students that come in through our gates, and we need to think about why we do community engagement. So, I'd like you to think of a stereotypical scientist. What on earth is a scientist is actually an activity that we run with primary school students. So, I ask them, am I a scientist? And their answer naturally is no. And I ask them why. Well, the main reason that they give is because I'm not wearing a white coat. So, I put on a white coat. On goes the white coat. Am I now a scientist? Well, in general sense, most students will turn around and say, yes, of course you are now a scientist. But not all of them. How about now, when I put my goggles on? I just need to do that. Put some goggles on. Am I now a scientist? Well, more students start thinking that I'm a scientist. Well, I guess I run that activity to start breaking down those sort of preconceived ideas about what makes a scientist. And in fact, I am a scientist. I have been refining my understanding of the physical and natural world for about 40 years. It's at the heart of my psyche to think about the what, the whys, the whens and the wherefores and try and come up with answers. So I question things. I actually develop hypotheses and I then come up or test those hypotheses. I then test those hypotheses for answers. School-age students are brilliant scientists. They have a natural disposition to inquiry. My work at the Wildlife Sanctuary focuses on this concept of inquiry learning. We develop education experiences that unpack the traditional teaching methodologies and expose students to authentic learning experiences that are spread across multiple disciplines. So, inquiry learning to me is about allowing students to develop their own pathways by providing them with big picture questions like, what is a scientist? And there are a multitude of answers when you pose those sorts of questions. And education can then take many, many different directions. So for me, it's about drawing out student understandings about a particular topic and then building on that knowledge. So the inquiry learning model enables students to develop a passion for learning. So now that I've set the scene and I've given you a little bit of an understanding about where I'm coming from, I'd like to talk about one of our flagship experiences. It's called Sustainability Leaders. And in this particular experience, we pose the question, how can we make the world a better place? So we developed this experience about 5 years ago because I was concerned about the relationship that we were developing with local schools. It seemed more of a business relationship where students would actually come to the Wildlife Sanctuary, they'd pay their $12 a head, they'd have an awesome experience, but then they would go home. It seemed like a bit of a production line. So no doubt our experiences had a lasting effect on some students. But I was concerned about the development of relationships with schools and their teachers and students. So I wanted a way of deepening the outcomes and measuring the benefits both educationally and within the sustainability context. So Sustainability Leaders was born. Student teams would develop their communication skills, their leadership skills, team building, negotiation skills by brainstorming tangible ideas and come up with achievable outcomes within their schoolyards or school grounds. So at the initial training day, we would actually have a session on leadership and the development of the ideas into action using our leadership kite. Then, when we went back to school, we would actually have a plan for how they will actually make the school a better place. So, habitat gardens, lizard lounges, frog bogs, nesting boxes, peacescapes, vegetable gardens are all sorts of things that students have created in their schoolyards. And a few years ago, we actually had some grade 6 students from a local primary school develop a documentary about how their school is progressing on sustainability action. They held a premiere where they decked out the school hall with the red carpet, and we had 2 grade 6 guys dressed in suits with the security badges, checking people's ID as they walked through the door. And they sold popcorn, and all the actors that were involved in the documentary dressed up in formal attire and sort of had a procession down through the school assembly. So I guess these are the tangible or physical outcomes that students develop by going through this leadership experience. But I guess what are some of the less tangible benefits? I'd like to share 2 examples. So at a local school, around 50% of the grade 2 to 4 students had never worked in a vegetable garden. Absolutely no concept of working out in the garden. Their understanding of vegetables was quite poor. They confused things like onions and potatoes and peas and beans and carrots and tomatoes. So we conducted the leadership experience, and through that, the teachers and the students decided that we should build some really cool vegetable gardens in their school. So the students made models of their vegetable gardens and what they would look like. We created we investigated different types of seed. We investigated different types of vegetables. Students created storybooks about their favourite vegetable. And on our weekly visits, we would work with the teachers and the students and created some great garden beds where we planted tomatoes and carrots and beans and peas and loads of herbs. And then at the end of the program, we actually cooked a whole heap of pasta dishes for the students to actually try their produce. So I hope that through that sort of a story, the benefits are actually quite self-evident. However, the unmeasurables tend to focus on things like student confidence, social development, communication, and a shared connection with nature. Students demonstrated a growth in confidence, but importantly, they developed skills by working together as a team. Teachers often commented on the fact that the struggling students suddenly came out of their shells or developed connections with fellow students where social skills were lacking. So these are the students that exhibit what we call the most significant change. So I met a student named Max at a local primary school when they came to the Wildlife Sanctuary and did the Sustainability Leaders course. They were a group of grade 4s. And at the end of their course, they decided that they would create a frog bog, a mini wildlife sanctuary and a butterfly garden back at their school. Max was in a team of the 8 students that were going to focus on the habitat for butterflies. So we went to the school, and one of the first activities that we needed to do after our initial sessions was to develop a plan, a step-by-step guide of how we were going to create the butterfly habitat. Well, Max didn't work well in the team. He was disruptive, he was disengaged, he challenged me at every corner, he had problems communicating, writing, and he really couldn't follow a conversation very well. So often when I would talk to him, he would talk about being bored. And so one day, or a couple of times actually, I discussed with him the concept of boredom, and he would say, "I just don't know, I'm just stupid." So after these planning sessions, we actually got Max onto building nesting boxes. We actually put him in a group of 3 and 4 students, and amongst a whole class, we actually created about 5 or 6 nesting boxes for their mini wildlife sanctuary back at their school. And all students, including Max, took to this activity with passion and enthusiasm. However, he still sort of exhibited those feelings of inadequacy and boredom. So this year, I'm actually working with Max's team again, further developing the butterfly concept. So, a fortnight ago, I went out to the school and I took my 1 by 1 metre quadrant. This was a session on measurement. What I was trying to do was get across to the students the sort of space requirements that you would need to create a habitat garden. So, can I fit in this space? Well, yes, I can. Can a number of people fit in this space? I asked the students. So how about we have a go, see if we can fit a number of people in this space. Fantastic. So we've got 5 people in a square metre. So is this enough space for us to dance? Let's have a little go. Possibly. Is this enough space for us to play? So you can take a seat. Thank you. So we had a discussion amongst the students about whether this was enough space for you to play. And the answer was, well, you could play if you were on your own, but not with a group of friends. So we thought about the concept of a bigger space. And Max turned around and said, I think we need at least 12 square metres. So I said to Max, so how are you going to measure out 12 square metres? And he said, well, how about we just place 12 of these together, or maybe even we could actually put them in a grid like 6 by 2 or 3 by 4. And I went, that's fantastic, Max. So we did that. Then I spoke to the students about their soccer pitch and the size of their soccer pitch. And they actually went out to the soccer pitch and we measured it up and we calculated the area of the soccer pitch. Then I posed the question about the size of the school. How big is your school? And all the students looked stumped. Then, all of a sudden, Max jumped up, hands in his air, really, really excited. He's gone, I know. What we can do is we can measure something we already know in the school, like the soccer pitch, and then we can take an aerial photograph and use that to calculate the size of the school. This blew me away. I happened to have an aerial photograph and I pulled it out and I said, Max, this is exactly what I was thinking. And you know what? I reckon that if you take charge of this activity, go out into the schoolyard and do this, it'll be fantastic. And they did it with absolute precision. So, apart from this being a really great story, I have no doubt that the change in Max was due to a number of influences, not just my session. But what I'm putting forward today is that these sorts of community engagement experiences are positive. They sometimes contain these eureka moments, but they certainly generate enthusiasm and empowerment. In this class, Max represents the most significant change. And I think that if we want to measure how successful community engagement is, these are the things that we should be looking for. This is why I engage with the community. I am passionate about change. I am passionate about linking with my community and creating positive experiences. I believe that the university has an obligation to share its knowledge and demonstrate leadership in the community. I think that we need to empower younger generations to share a passion for learning. Successful community engagement should be measured by its impacts in the community, not by the enrolments of students at the university. If it is done well, however, it could lead to an increase in student enrolments, but this should never be seen as the primary purpose. Community engagement should be beneficial for everyone. Thank you.